Hello and welcome to FDT-TV. England are out. I'm not even going to cry about it.
Right. I'm not writing a letter of apology.
No, you're definitely not. You haven't got to now. Yeah, it's very sad to see England are out after, I've got to say, it was actually an all right performance, but once again, VAR referees have let football down. But anyway, we'll come on to that in more detail in just a moment. Just very quickly, for those of you that are new to the podcast, my name is Michael and I am joined by my very esteemed colleague, Mr. Ian Barker. This is a weekly podcast we do for everything Premier League and other football related matters. Obviously, there is a World Cup going on at the moment. Not that it matters anymore, but the Premier League is back in a couple of weeks, so we'll be back to business as usual once the World Cup is concluded. But Ian, how are you doing this week?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm happy I don't have to write a letter of apology. Brazil were out, so that's ruined my week. But yeah, Premier League is back in 2 weeks to the day. So
yeah, boy.
Can't moan at
Good. Right, so a couple of things, obviously, I want to talk about within this week's podcast. Obviously, as I just mentioned, World Cup going on at the moment, and we have just concluded the quarterfinals yesterday. So the first game of the quarterfinals was Croatia versus Brazil. Now, I've got to be honest, I'm kind of glad Croatia went through. And I don't mean that anything disrespectfully to Brazil. I think Brazil were absolutely phenomenal all the way up until this particular game. There was a couple of players within the Brazil squad which were starting to get on my tits with their level of arrogance that they were taking on the football pitch, and I'm kind of glad they were a little bit humbled, if I'm being completely honest. Croatia were absolutely brilliant at their penalties. Their keeper, I can't remember what his name is, but he was absolutely... Sorry?
Dominic Livakovic.
Yeah, him. He was absolutely fantastic. But this brings me onto a wider issue that I want to talk about, and it's the standard of penalties. Not so much just in this World Cup, but I think in general. So just very quickly, from my perspective, I'm starting to get really annoyed when you see all these people that are trying to do these fancy two-step run-ups and trying to either Panenka the goalkeeper and just trying to look cool whilst doing it. Long gone are the days where you've got a David Luiz 500-yard run-up from the other penalty spot and absolutely twatting the ball. Everyone's just got to try and place these penalty kicks and look good doing it. Well, what are your thoughts on the penalties nowadays?
I think it goes in peaks and troughs. A couple of years ago, you had that silly thing that Pogba did, and I see one person do it the other day with a couple of little steps, and they always miss.
Yeah.
So I think in a year's time, 18 months' time, we'll start seeing the longer run-ups and just absolute levering it. Put your big toe through the ball. You know what I mean? It's as a former goalkeeper, I can say if people are putting it, trying to place it, it's easier to guess where they're going. It's when it's low and hard, it's hard to get to, and even if you do, it's hard to then keep hold of it.
Yeah.
So penalty shootout, it doesn't really matter. You just got to stop it during the game. Low and hard, you can't get better than that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think it was a theme that was continued into the Argentina game as well. So Argentina taking on the Netherlands. I think Argentina were 2-0 up, absolutely flying comfortably. Seemed to be taking their foot off the gas a bit, and Netherlands equalised, I think, in very late on in the game. And I think their last one was on the 98th or 90 plus 8th minute of stoppage time. And again, it was one of those ones, I think, for the neutral, it was good because obviously you had a bit of extra time and penalties. And there haven't been enough penalty shootouts within this tournament, and it was good that they all kind of come at once. But
There was a yellow cards in that game, weren't there?
oh god, yeah, and I think that right at the very end, even after the penalty shootout, there was a bit of a bust up between the two teams as well. It's crazy. I get, obviously you've got to be passionate about the sport, and I think some people were taking the piss a little bit, but yeah, I can't even remember who said it, but someone said, "Oh, that's another yellow card," and he said, "Oh, to be honest, I've completely lost count of how many cards or anything there've been in this particular game," or basically slagging off the referee as well. But yes, we did see Emi Martinez. As soon as Van Dijk stepped up, Emi Martinez has had his number a couple of times in shootouts over the last couple of years, and certainly for us. And I knew he was going to save it. 100% knew he was going to save it. But again, some absolutely poor penalties from the Netherlands.
When you look at who took the Netherlands penalties, there was like Van Dijk took the first one. I know he's the captain, but he's also a defender.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not if it's last minute of the game and you've got a penalty to win, you're not going to put your defender on it, are you?
No.
It just baffled me, the selection choice.
But
what do I know?
Yeah, no, we're just fans, mate. We're not allowed to have opinions. But yeah, so Argentina threw in penalties. The next game we saw Morocco. Absolutely fantastic result against Portugal. I think Portugal were throwing everything at Morocco in the last 20 odd minutes or so. But I think a theme for Portugal this year has been they've been very slow to start and then gradually warm into the game. Unfortunately, in this particular example, Morocco were defending for their lives. They were absolutely fantastic. Even the great Ronaldo couldn't score against them. But just obviously with the incident prior to the World Cup, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, could it have an impact on the Portugal squad, etc., like overbearing on the tournament?" Do you think that his attitude would have had something to do with their demise this year?
If anything, I think his attitude was probably better since he got out of the Manchester United contract.
Right.
I think if he'd been targeted and tied down, they said, no, we're going to double down. You're just going to go in the reserves. I think he would have been even worse because he would have been throwing him under the bus all left and right and centre. Where they just sort of severed ties with him. It was like, well, okay, I can just focus on playing football now. So I think he's a guy that's been on top for so long that he's not coping with not being as he used to be. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying he's a bad player by any means, but I just think he's struggling with that come down and that latter part of his career.
What do you see next for Ronaldo?
One or two things. He will move to Chelsea for a corporate deal, or he will move somewhere Qatari backed or Saudi backed for a ridiculous fee. There was pumped around 300 million a year. Just a couple of days after he left his Manchester United contract, but it's whether he wants to do that. So that was for the next 4 years. So
nice
not
little learner,
a bad
isn't it?
way. Yeah, not a bad way, and then zero tax as well if it's in Saudi. So
yeah.
Nice 1.2 bill in the bank. Yeah, I can't imagine he'd turn it down.
No, it's been one of these very difficult ones to turn down, wouldn't it? But then, do you want to be stuck playing out in that?
Not being funny, he's going to be the best player even at 57, isn't he? Out there. I know it sounds horrible, but quality of him and the quality of the players that will be around him. Because any of the decent Saudi players will end up going to other leagues.
Yeah.
It's just the way. So.
Yes. So, yes, Morocco through beating Portugal, and then the main event of the weekend, England versus France. I don't want to sound like sour grapes, but I'm going to sound like sour grapes. We were absolutely fucking robbed in that game. The referee was absolutely diabolical. Some shocking decisions. As we said at the start of the podcast, shocking decisions. Referees and VAR have ruined football once again, and it's not just this particular game. There's been some poor decisions throughout the tournament, but then again, there's been some good decisions. But for this particular game, how this guy was an official, I do not know, because there was a lot of stuff that he missed, a lot of stuff he got wrong, a lot of stuff the VAR either didn't check or checked and said, nah, it was fine. Any slight touch on any France player, referee was blown up. No, it's foul, go away. To be honest, I think we were lucky to get 2 penalties in that game, because I think it was only begrudgingly that he actually gave the second one. The amount of times he had to look at that decision, and he was like, oh, fuck, I can't even... I can't worm my way out of that one.
I think if I'm honest, I think that's a lapse from Theo Hernandez there, that we got that penalty where he barred Mason Mount. I think if he'd had the foresight to turn and look at the ball and run into him, it would have been intent to play the ball, and it wouldn't have been a penalty. Because he looked away and put his shoulder through him, that's the only reason it was a penalty. The first one that we didn't get, I don't think was a penalty. I think Harry Kane muscled his way off the guy, lost his balance slightly, realised he wasn't going to get the ball when the other defender was running in, so went to ground really easily. I think if he wanted to, he could have stayed on his feet. But there were a number of incidents where he got through the box and he went to chip Lloris rather than put his foot through the ball. You know, like, I'm not being funny. I think there's a little bit of, you're my club captain, I can't put one over you. I can't just smash a ball against your clatia, because I'll get ripe for it when I get back to the team. But equally, so I'm not defending the ref by any means. I think he was shocking. I think he took the liberty of sort of try and let the game flow to a new level. But in the second or third minute, Giroud went for like a scorpion kick spinny thing where he's being dragged to the ground by Harry Maguire. Like, equally, could you have given that as a penalty? I wouldn't have. In the Premier League, it would have been a penalty. So it's one of those. Jordan Pickford made one save. The first time we come up against a team that are half decent and we lose. Like, I'm not being funny. We beat. What did we beat? Iran, Wales, Senegal. Not exactly the powerhouses of world football, are they?
No.
But we couldn't beat the US. Sorry, I got a bit wind. We couldn't beat the US. So who expected us to go on and win it? Had we got through France, you could have looked at those games and gone, okay, unless we play Croatia, you probably fancy it. But even so, Morocco are looking good. I think they're going to give France a game. When you look at the team that they've got and the players they've got, it's like, actually, quite fancy them to win it.
Yeah,
I would quite like them to win it. To be fair, first African nation to win it.
Yeah, it would be brilliant. And I know we've been speaking about it in our little group about could Morocco actually go on and win this World Cup. And I think I've heard some pundits already talking today saying that it wouldn't be as good if Morocco were to win it as one of the powerhouses. But at the same time, I think, do you know what? I nearly said at the start of the tournament that this tournament is crying out for a new winner of the World Cup.
That's what makes it special. It's a bit like the glory of the FA Cup, isn't it? That underdog story of anyone could win it. It's unlikely, but anyone could win it. And the fact that when you look at the Moroccan team, on paper, they're phenomenal. They're playing as a team. They're playing to their strengths. They're playing on the counter-attack with blistering pace. And it's, I fancy them. So I really do.
So we've got the semi-finals, I think, coming up this week on Wednesday, I believe it is. So, I think the finals are the weekend, isn't it?
It's on Sunday.
Yeah. So by the time we record our next podcast, there will be essentially there will be a new World Cup champion, unless France go all the way. Yeah,
they're the same.
Yeah. All right. Technicalities. All right. Call me out again. Um, obviously, that is the end of the line for England in this World Cup. Not the way we wanted to go out, but I suppose if you go back to the start of the tournament, you were never really confident on us winning it anyway.
Here's the thing, right? Had Harry Kane not done his best Johnny Wilkinson impression and scored that penalty, would you have fancied us in a penalty shootout?
Not so much a penalty shootout, but I think the way we were playing at the time, I think even extra time, we could have done them in extra time. I think up until the point where Giroud scored, I thought we were absolutely brilliant. We managed to keep Mbappe quiet all game. You could see he was proper rattled when we got the second penalty. So much so he pulled that absolutely ridiculous gurney-like face after seeing Harry Kane miss the chance to equalise the game. That's the one. Look at that. I was pretty close though, wasn't I?
Yeah, it's great.
So I don't think he would have done that if he wasn't as rattled, because I think
Carl Walker marked him phenomenally, didn't he?
exactly. He was completely out of the game. I think he only had two real chances. One when he was cutting down and then got to the byline and then did a little jinky thing, ended up hitting the side net or cutting across the back of the box. But for a player who is as dominant as he is, you're right. Carl Walker did an absolutely amazing job, and we were just let down. I think for Olivier Giroud again. I think I called it last week, and I said I think he's going to come back and haunt us, and sure enough he did. But he's proven again to be one of the greatest strikers. Well, he's now France's top goal scorer at international level, and I think one of the most underrated strikers that in this kind of modern era. When you look at the likes of your Ronaldos, your Messis, your Benzemas, etc. Had Giroud gone to a top club, he would be scoring goals week in, week out. And I know he does all right at AC Milan. He done all right with us, done all right with Chelsea, won some silverware with Chelsea, but he's never really got the name, and I think that's partly to do with his pace, but my God, his footballing brain is something else. He's always crops up in the right places at the right time. He's got a head, got a left foot.
At the age of 21, he was playing in Ligue 2 in France, and he's still playing now. I know he's what, 34 maybe.
It might actually be 35.
But he's won a World Cup. He's won a Champions League. He's pretty much won everything, isn't he? So yeah, fair play to the geezer. It's one of those things you go, oh, Harry Kane's going to overtake Wayne Rooney at some point. Yeah, but he scored 96 goals against San Marino. Like
95 of them penalties.
Yeah, to take over Thierry Henry, who's arguably one of the best players ever to grace a football pitch. Phenomenal.
Yep.
Absolutely phenomenal.
So, yeah. Speaking of Harry Kane, there's a couple of things I want to ask, which kind of then leads into a follow-on question. So, Harry Kane has scored 53 goals for England, 17 of which are penalties. Do you think that warrants him as obviously I know from a statistical point of view that he could go on and be England's top scorer, but do you think he's England's greatest striker?
No. Not a chance. Not a chance. I'm sorry. It's one of those that he doesn't offer as much to the team as Rooney did, and Rooney never really did anything in tournaments. But then, I mean, you look back at some of the players we've had that are strikers. All right, they haven't won anything, but neither has he. To say he's our greatest ever striker that's not won anything, he might have scored the most goals, but I would like to see a breakdown of who those goals were against. Do you know what I mean? I'm just trying to have a look, to be honest. But
That's all right. No. Just whilst you're doing it, as I said, I think he was on 16 penalties after the first. Before the first penalty and scored that. So I think it's 17. Could have been 18 penalties, but obviously Nasser is still trying to look for that one at the moment. And I've heard that it's
on the way back here, I think. I said it's coming home, but that's not quite what they meant.
Yeah, so it's still currently in orbit, but we heard that they are making progress on managing to bring that one down. But obviously, come the next World Cup, he's currently 29 years old. He's going to be 33 years old. Do you think it's going to be time now for Harry Kane in an England shirt, or do you see him captaining and playing in the next Euros?
He will play. He won't retire from England because I think you don't do that. I don't think as a person who wants to represent your nation, you ever sort of toss you out and say, I'm sorry, but I'm not making myself available for selection. Unless like your manager's going to pick you over someone who really should go. Do you know what I mean? And you're going to have to take it on the chin. I mean, I'm not looking at what Gareth Southgate's selection was, but maybe there's some players who should have done that. I think he will always make himself available. And if I'm honest, I don't think, how to word this, I don't think he would be terrible, providing that he's played in a system and utilised properly. If he's being played as a lone striker, which he has been, it doesn't work because he dropped too deep. If he's played in a pairing and he drops deep, that makes more sense. Or if he's played as a sort of a number 9, I suppose, or number 10 through the middle, and just sort of that plays that attacking midfielder role, then that works as well with someone else in front of him. But on his own, it just doesn't make any sense.
No. I was starting to get really annoyed. Not so much just from this tournament, but I think we've seen it. I know he's cropped up as the top goal scorer a couple of tournaments ago, but it's becoming immensely frustrating from a fan sitting and watching a game. You could see that the game was crying out for something different. And I know, obviously, he scored the first penalty, but when you're going up against someone that you play with on a daily basis, or at least train with on a daily basis at club level, yeah. I'd say that becomes significantly more pressure on you because they're going to know your strengths, your weaknesses, where you're likely to go, and I think that was proven in the second penalty because instead of trying to outwit Hugo Lloris, he tried to do exactly the same thing, but absolutely leather it. But again, it was only a two-step run-up, and consequently, as I said, raised it over the bar because I think there was too much pressure on him in order to score that. Now, if you give that to someone else on the pitch, Saka's not shied away from penalties. I know, obviously, he missed the one in the last Euros. And come under significant fire from it, but there's other people on the pitch that can score penalties. I personally think his time in an England shirt should be done. At the very least,
I don't think he should be captain.
No, I don't think he should be playing anymore. I think we've seen it over the last 2 or 3 years ago that youth is coming through. Which we need to kind of now build on. I don't know, we're always going to see that cycle where you do have the more senior players or the mix of youth and experience. But I think the youth have so much more experience because they have done it at tournament level, granted at younger levels where they have won World Cups and Euros and all that sort of stuff. So they've got that mentality already. But for me, other than scoring penalties, usually, I don't see what Harry Kane offers to the game anymore. From an England perspective, we've not really seen him hit heights in tournament football. Certainly over the last 2 or 3 tournaments. It took him, I think, about 4 or 5 games to get onto the score sheet in the last World Cup or even the Euros. So I don't see him. I mean, he's obviously going to get one more game, isn't he? Because he want to become England's top scorer. But
yeah,
that's an achievement. Don't get me wrong. But when you're playing as many games as you are nowadays, compared to the likes of your Shearers and all that sort of stuff,
yeah. So just a quick one. He's taken 21 penalties for England and scored 17 of them. So in comparison, Rooney took 7, scored 7. I mean, because Lampard was the penalty taker when Rooney was playing. And when you look at his conversion rate, it's not particularly good. Rooney's 100%. Shearer's 85%. Who's next up there? Beckham was 71%. So it's like, again, I don't think his time is done. I just think he needs to play a different role, and it needs to have someone who's tactically aware, unlike Mr. Southgate, who's tactically inept. To say to him, okay, you're not our number one. You're not our centre forward. You're not the main man. You're the producer. He's done well at Spurs, putting Son through for years, and he has created a few goals. But at one point in the game, he was playing left back. Why is your striker playing left back? At no point is your striker meant to be at left back. The game's running into the box. Where are you? Oh, you're at left back. Oh, okay, that's good. For who? Nobody. But I think, yeah, I think it needs a change of management. But I'm sure we'll get onto that shortly.
Oh, I was just going to say that's actually a really nice segue. Because obviously we're at the tournament now. Gareth Southgate has come out and has asked for some time to think about what he wants to do. So obviously we know your opinions now that England need a new manager. What direction would you go and why?
I don't know what direction I would go, but I said this after the Euro final. Actually, I said it after the World Cup semi-final last time round, that you should go while you're on top. Then he got to the finals. Okay, go while you're on top. At no point has any club inquired about his availability. At club level, he's done shit. And the fact that you're this England manager who's doing the unbelievable, you've brought everyone together, it's a really good camp atmosphere, you've got to a semi-final of a World Cup, you've got to a final of a Euros. No one wants you. Surely that ring should be ringing alarm bells. That nobody wants you. Because there's clubs after managers all the time and no one wants a geezer who's managed to do the impossible job at England. What way do you go with it? I think there's a number of ways you could go with it. I know Tuchel allegedly has put his name in the hat. Do you want that? I don't know. I think if it's one of those things, I am very much a believer that you should only be able to manage your own country nationality. And I know that sounds a little bit silly because you could go, well, we could get a better manager in if we get this person in. If, hypothetically, we get Tuchel in, we play Germany, in his heart, who does he want to win? He wants Germany to win because that's his country. That's who sort of, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you could go Tuchel. Pochettino is being linked with a Chelsea job, which is strange. But I think he will be another one who's possibly up there. Sean Dyche is always there. Eddie Howe, I would have said yes, but he's now doing really well at Newcastle. That's going to be hard to make him leave that unless he does a dual role, which I don't see the FA wanting. bring back Big Sam. He's out of a job. I'm sure he would take it up again. Not going to have the striker playing at left back, at least, are you? There's so many different ways you could go with it. It could be the case that if Potter leaves Chelsea, I think he will end up at England. I think that's unlikely because I think Bohi at Chelsea has a plan, but the media are trying to push that he's going to get sacked. But I really do think if he was to get sacked, he might walk into that job. Other than that, I think we may end up with Thomas Tuchel, which wouldn't be terrible. You know what you're going to get. It's going to be a methodical passing game. Is that right for the world stage? I don't think so. I think you've got to play pacey, attacking football because every game's a knockout game. I don't think you can rest on your laurels and have 90% possession. And then you look at Sean Dyche. He's going to make you hard to beat. He's going to pick play. He's not going to muck about. You'd like to think he is the sort of geezer who would pick players on form rather than reputation because he likes a hard-working player rather than a flashy one. So, yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. But I do think Southgate, he could stay on. I think it'd be a mistake, and I think people hate him, especially when we get even worse the next tournament.
Go out the group stages.
It's one of those things, though, that he's got to be the man that says, I'm taking the blame for this. He picked the players. He put them in that position. He said that what he wanted, how he wanted them to play. I'm sorry, Rashford didn't come on to what, the 75th minute?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Henderson was playing over some of the other players. Why? Harry Kane was playing left back. Why? Like, I think he's got to be big enough to say it didn't work out. I think I've done what I can. I've changed the mentality around the England camp. Now it's time for someone else to be able to take the reins and try and lead England to the bigger and better than what we've done already.
Fair enough. To be honest, I completely agree with you. I don't have any particular names or anything of anyone that I would want to take over, but I think we've seen what 6 years now ish of Gareth Southgate at the helm. I do agree. I think it's time for a change, but I don't know where or who to go with. And granted, it could be one of these grass is always greener on the other side type of scenarios. And we have seen obviously a massive change and development within the England setup, but it's not worked. Granted, as I said, I think we were robbed a little bit anyway, but. Yeah. So
I'm just looking through some of the odds on next England managers, and there's some weird ones. Sam Allardyce has the same odds as being the next England manager as Michael Owen.
Oh, for God's sake! Can you imagine Michael Owen?
So in the top 10, you've got Pochettino, Tuchel, Rodgers, Howe, Potter, Lampard, Cooper, Steve Holland, who allegedly had a punch up with Ben White, Gerrard, and Wayne Rooney. Is that 10? 1, 2, 3. It's 10. How good am I? I can count.
You heard it here live on air, people.
10. We've got socks on. Don't ask me to do anymore. But yeah, so I mean, out of them, Rooney, you could see possibly taking up that. Is it too soon for him? I don't know. He's making noises about coming back to the UK, isn't he? His family's still in over here. I don't think Gerrard or Lampard should take it. Steve Cooper, maybe, because he's been there and done it. He's the guy who's led these players to the Under-17s World Cup and won that. Yeah. If I'm honest, I think it's got to be an Englishman. It has to be.
Well, it's funny you should mention that because I heard on TalkSport on the way home there was their fact of the day, and apparently no team has ever won the World Cup with a manager from outside of their country. So it has to be an English person if we're ever going to win.
We're never going to win.
No,
we're never going to win.
Well, again.
Yeah, we won one.
Yeah, that's enough. Let's not be greedy. But yes, obviously we also mentioned very quickly that the Premier League, in fact, just very quickly, actually, I will mention this, that the Premier League is coming back in a couple of weeks, and it is going to be England. Fucking hell, I've still got my World Cup brain on. It is going to be the FDT-TV presented derby, West Ham versus Arsenal. In fact, we'll revisit this. We will revisit this in next week's podcast, just to make it a bit more relevant, and we'll make some predictions about that game.
I mean, either that Arsenal are going to get beaten by West Ham, or David Moyes is going to get sacked.
Yeah, quite possibly. But yes, speaking of predictions, we every week we do make some predictions on the podcast. Last week we had our World Cup ones. Granted, we were right in the middle of the quarterfinal stages, and we only had 2 games that we were predicting at that particular point. So we had England versus France and Netherlands versus Argentina. Ian, you had very specifically 2-2 and France to win on penalties. How
so close.
Exactly. And I went for a very patriotic England to win 2-1. So we know the score was 2-1 to France. No points for either of us there. Which is a shame because I got the right score, just the wrong way around. Netherlands versus Argentina. You had Netherlands to win 2-1. I had Argentina to win 3-2. But we know, as I mentioned earlier, the score was 2-2 and Argentina went through on penalties. So no points there for us last week. So the table stands as is. But we do have 2 more games to predict this week. Obviously, the semi-finals. Croatia versus Argentina. And then Morocco versus France. Ian, give us your thoughts on Croatia versus Argentina.
Croatia are the team that everyone sleeps on, and they always seem to slip through the net. Yeah, they are quality. Modric versus Messi, I think, is the way the media will probably sell it. I think this is going to another penalty shootout. Can Croatia win 3 in a row? No, I don't think so. I think if it goes to a penalty shootout, they lose. I'm going to go 2-1 Croatia.
Okay.
But I do think they might go out on penalties as well at the same time. But 2-1 Croatia, let's just go with that. Definitive.
Right. Okay. I am going. Do you know what? I do agree with you about the penalties. I think this is going to be a very much a stalemate game. And you mentioned it, that Croatia are kind of like a sleeping dog. And once you start kicking it, they're going to kind of bite back at you. And I do think Argentina are going to come out all guns blazing to try and seal this game nice and early. But we see it against the Netherlands, and the Netherlands managed to claw their way back in. So that we know that they've got some defensive issues, can concede goals, as well as the very obvious goal threat as well. But I am going to go for... I'm going to go for 1-1 Argentina on... In fact, yeah, Argentina penalties. There you go, called it. So Morocco versus France. I'm so split between this game because I think France have once again shown their quality. I know they were a bit fortunate against us because of some of the decisions that we had go against us, and obviously Harry Kane missing the equaliser. But they showed their mettle and can dig in and get goals out of nothing. But that being said, Morocco have done exactly that this tournament, or throughout this whole tournament. Where do I sit with this one? I am gonna. Do you know what? I think it's gonna be such a good game, but I think France are gonna nick this one. I think they may feel a little bit embarrassed about how well we played and how well we managed to keep a couple of their players quiet. But I'm gonna go for Morocco 1, France 2.
Okay. I'm going to swing the way in Morocco. Now, what was the score against Portugal? 2-1.
1-0.
1-0. So my stat, I think, is still correct that they've only conceded 1 goal this tournament, which was an own goal.
Yes.
So the bit that they're going to be struggling with is they're going to try and rush Naya for good, who is a West Ham defender, I will let you know, back from injury because Roman Saiz got stretchered off. So they'll try and rush him back. I'm going to go in the series. Apparently, he's being linked with West Ham as well for a January transfer move to score the winner. France to lose 1-0.
Ooh.
1-0 Morocco.
Yep.
And then London will be in a shutdown again, not from the snow, but from the Moroccans jumping up and down in the centre of the Leicester Square, wherever they were.
Okay, so just to recap then, Croatia versus Argentina. Ian, you've gone for 2-1. I've gone for 1-1. Argentina to win on penalties. For Morocco versus France, you've gone for 1-0. 1-0 to Morocco. I've gone 2-1 to France. Mm-hmm. Do you want to make... In fact, no, because it's not going to be... It's not. We're not going to have another podcast between now and then anyway. But
once we have put our, we know who's in the final, we should tweet out our prediction for the final for an extra points.
Like it. Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Sounds good.
That's what I think.
Okay, obviously, I've mentioned it a couple of times. The Premier League is going to be back very soon after this this weekend. We will touch it more on it in next week's podcast. But until then, I haven't got anything else I want to cover in this podcast. Have you? No. So thank you very much for tuning in. If you have stayed this long, please hit that like and subscribe button. It will do us a massive favour. We do want to try and hit 100 subscribers before the end of the January transfer window. It will be really helpful if you could do that for us. But until then, I've been Mike.
I've been Ian.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Ciao.